Thanks to the alumni who are here to be part of Let Your Life Speak Day. And it is a real pleasure for me to introduce one of my former students from the class of 2001, Jeremy Oldfield, who's doing all kinds of great things right now, and he'll tell you about him in a little bit. But mostly I remember him as a student in my US History and Gender and Sexuality class, and I remember that he was also a great songwriter, writing a song called Highway Moonshine that said something like this, if I can remember right. It's a big country, but it's yours and mine. I know it's rusty, but I'm set to see it shine. I got it, right? I haven't listened to that for 20 years, and I still got it, right? That's what you all do to us. Like we keep you in here, and you seniors are getting ready to leave. We're going to keeping you in here too. So don't forget that. And Jeremy and I a few years ago did a little trick too at Founders Day, and we're going to sort of reenact some of that with some of my friends in the student body now. So anyway, Jeremy. I always knew he was going to do something amazing, something that was different than the ordinary. And he's found his own path, his own way, and it's really interesting. And it's really great that he's speaking to us about sustainable farming here on Earth Day. And we should all be thinking about the planet and how we can make the planet a more sustainable, more loving place. Jeremy is a manager of field academics at the Yale Sustainable Food Program, where he uses agriculture to augment teaching and learning across Yale University. He supervises year-round farm programming for students and community members, builds curricula centering on agricultural experiences, donates produce to mutual aid organizations in New Haven, Connecticut, and teaches a farm-based class called RYE, Cultural History and Embodied Practice. I love that title. It's so postmodern. After graduating from Sidwell in 2001, he completed a degree in American Studies at Williams College. And in 2012, he received his MFA degree. Happy to introduce to you Jeremy Oldfield, my friend from the class of 2001.
Hi, Sidwell. Mr. Garman wants me to call him Brian, and that's hard. Hi, Brian. And hello, space that used to be called the old gym. Okay, when I was here, there was a basket right here, a basket there, and a basket there. And fond memories. I was a lifer, would come here for a little bit of basketball camp in the summers, right? And we would just ball out here. And then I would have 2 quarters for a blow pop that I would buy out there, and 1 quarter for a cup of Orange Crush soda that I would buy out in this little lobby here. And so I just want you to know that as I present myself with this sort of like organic farmer beard, and I speak about the righteousness of organic farming, just know this is all built on a foundation of, corn syrup and balling out. Okay, so, and I love that about Sidwell. Okay, well, there are a lot of different reasons why you might visit the Yale Farm, okay? You might arrive to be part of our open work days, which we host every week, where you participate in some of the soil tillage, the crop tending, and the harvest that we donate to mutual aid organizations throughout New Haven, okay? You might visit as part of an Indigenous food sovereignty class at Yale. In these pictures, we have a Nahuatl language ceremony, corn planting happening. This is just last week. And they are helping us steward the 3 sisters with seed that was gifted by regional tribe seed keepers to the Native American Cultural Center at Yale. Okay. You may be part of a graduate seminar that decants the color blue from the rows of Japanese indigo that we have growing on the Yale farm. Okay, so you kind of create this little indigo sun tea in this huge vat, and then you churn and add interesting powders, and the color blue settles out. And in this picture, the student who's on the right, Deja, she came to me a few years ago with these 2 things. Her ancestors were enslaved in a southern plantation that grew indigo. And she was very, very interested in textiles and natural dyes herself, right? And so she was wondering if she could combine those and add indigo to the Yale farm. She totally spearheaded it, and now like 3 different classes always visit the indigo, and members of the Library of Congress come up to visit our indigo. So it's like Deja totally pioneered a new thing, part of our programming there. You may join my summer class, RIE, a cultural history and embodied practice, where we ask questions about queerness, power, gender roles over time through the lens of this humble and resilient grain called rye. That's me kneeling in what we call America's smallest grain field. We have a little postage stamp of grain, okay, on the Yale farm, and we bring that into our teaching as well. Or you might be a New Haven public school student, second grader, who comes to the Yale farm every week to learn science curriculum through interesting field stuff. And the big signature song for that is the worm song, which is munch, munch, wiggle, wiggle, poop, poop, soil. You may even volunteer to be part of that effort yourself, okay? Or you might be part of a class called Beer in American History. These are classes that I hope you write down and take if you come to this university. It's an American Studies class, and we visit our hops vines, okay? And we harvest our hops, which are a bittering agent in beer. And we make beer, right? And we call it Yale Ale. And we use that as a launch pad to discuss different interplay between federal prohibition policy and agricultural economies in different regions of the US. You have to be 21. You absolutely have to be 21 to drink that. I think this is being videotaped, so okay, there we go. Or you might join my small cohort of undergraduate farm managers, okay, who every week arrive to the farm, look at the crop plan, this big calendar that shows what you're gonna plant when, and looks at the conditions on the ground and learns new skills, and then immediately turns around and shares those skills with visitors and volunteers who come, okay? This is a fun part of the Yale farm. We have this crisp crop plan, this idea of like what you plant, where, and when. And it's so perfect. And then you have the world and the reality and the mess and the ways that life and weather events and different types of wildfires that are blowing down smoke from Canada throw you curveballs. And your job as a farmer is to be taking in all of this, to be listening and to be doing responsive things. So one farmer once told me that you have your crop plan, that's your sheet music. And then you got your farming, and that's your jazz, right? That's where you're responding. That's where the art of being a listener and being a farmer interplay. We have a theme of trying to introduce students to the messy realities of the world, not just the best laid plans. Or you might just visit our charismatic flock of laying hens, okay? This is a big part of mental health at Yale University, is standing next to a hen, okay? This is a lovely group of hens that give us eggs every single day. If you fall in love with them, you can join the team that takes care of them on a sort of weekly basis and call yourself a chicken tender, okay? So that is our thing. You may find yourself coming to the Yale farm just to find balance and community in shared work and shared purpose after a particularly isolating week of being a student. Or you may come to enjoy the best pizza in New Haven. And that is like a political statement coming from New Haven, Connecticut, okay? And so we have this wood-fired oven. We throw our wood in there. It burns to a heat of between 800 and 1,000 degrees. And then every Friday, we fire off about 50 to 70 free pizzas for anybody who comes, okay? And a student will present on food systems questions that they're asking in their studies, okay? As the sun sets behind a hill and a rotating band comes in. It's a really lovely event. Now, however you eventually come to the Yale farm, you are invited. Okay, you know the farm manager now. And it is a place I'm trying to show that wears many hats, okay? On the one hand, it's a food project that donates food to mutual aid and hunger relief organizations through New Haven, and tries to situate ourselves with the act of asking, what can we do to help, rather than assuming that we know how to help New Haven, okay? The act of approaching community groups and seeing if our help would be necessary, and if so, what would that look like? Those are big questions that we're trying to give our students an occasion to get into. Okay, we're also sort of like a campus museum or a library on campus. We're a place where over 20 different departments send their faculty members to teach and make their teaching and learning come alive at our farm. We're also what we call a problem-rich environment for problem-based learning, which is just a sort of jargony way of saying that I get to be the person who takes problems and converts them into good things, right? Did a swarm of beetles come and just destroy your beans? That's a teaching moment, right? Did a weather event come and wash away all your topsoil right after you tilled it? That is a deep learning moment, okay? And so we get to kind of like lean into those. And related to that, we call the Yale Farm a safe space to fail at Yale. I don't know if anybody in this room feels pressured to succeed. I know that, wait a second. I certainly do. I know that there are students at Yale who feel hobbled by the pressure to optimize their lives for good GPAs, for a sort of perfect record when it comes to academic pursuits. There are students that I've spoken with who don't take certain classes because I might get a B. And here we are, this low-stakes site on campus where ideas can get brought up, tried out, fail, no problem, not on your permanent record, right? Iterative failure, learning from failure. That kind of is what farming is, and so that becomes a service that we provide as well. The Yale Farm is also a place where the membrane that can form between the Yale student community and the New Haven community, there's this membrane that can form between them. There's privilege that's separating these two groups. There's different lived experiences. There's the fact that one group is there forever and another group is there for 4 years and they're out, they're launching into leadership positions. That membrane can kind of thin out at the Yale Farm. If you're weeding a bed of carrots and there's a PhD student in computer science and a grandma, who's better at weeding? The grandma, but that gulf of knowledge and expertise that sometimes keeps two communities from ever talking to each other, it just kind of like goes away when you're weeding the carrots, right? Or sharing a slice of free pizza, and we really enjoy that. To the Yale administration, I say one thing, and to the Yale students, I say another thing. To the Yale administration, we are a place where the Yale Farm is a place where we cultivate food-literate leaders. Okay, the administrators love leadership, okay? I think that they would be happier to know that we are launching folks. When I say the administration, I mean the Yale administration. The administration here at Sidwell is incredibly flexible and lovely, as is the Yale one, okay? What am I saying? We are interested in the fact that there's gonna be policymakers, NGO executives, different food activists and food leaders that are going to be coming, launching out into the world, who have gotten a little bit of work on the Yale Farm and the perspective building. To the students that I work with, we use the farm as a place to invite them to cultivate radical humility, okay? You can ask me about that if we have time for questions if you want. Okay, now I want to tell you, now that I've kind of situated, and I hope that you're like, feel like when you travel to New Haven, you can find this 1 acre plot and ask for Jeremy. I would love to talk to you about it. I want to just maybe tease out for a few minutes a little dotted line between my time at Sidwell and like what brought me to this Yale Farm, okay? I gotta say, I just showed you the bulk of my photos. There's this weird effect where all of my 20s that I want to talk about here in like 5 minutes is a rather photo bereft time in my life, okay? Like a camera phone kind of became a thing when I was 30, which kind of dates me. There's almost a correlation between the least amount of photos I have and the most intense effect that that period of time had on me. I don't know if that's correlative or causal, but you're gonna see fewer photos coming up. And I'm sorry about that. I mean, this is the end of your Let Your Life Speak day of experience. But I just want to let you know that when I was a senior at Sidwell, and we would have meetings in this very space, it was a gym space, there were bleachers. I remember wanting to be a novelist, a celebrated novelist, a folk singer. I wanted to be a radio producer, doing cool long-form journalism like This American Lifestyle. I wanted to be a historian. I wanted to be the President of the United States. I wanted to be a migrant worker from Central America, like myself. I wanted to be a hobo who was riding the rails and seeing the real America. Okay, I wanted to be an Olympic distance runner, a backcountry homesteader, a sort of teenage heartthrob rock star, and a high school English teacher, okay? And so I took these reasonable hopes, and I left Sidwell, and I went to college, and I had a hard time. College, there are things about Sidwell that you don't, this is such a pat statement, but there are things that you don't realize until you're gone, right? There are basic values that are happening in this room that shape how everybody here interacts. And the projects that we all tacitly know are the projects that we're after, that you understand were so special once you leave, okay? And so nothing against my college, but I felt like there was a sort of like elite boarding school culture that had really been transplanted into this small school in the Berkshire Mountains. I felt like some of the values of simplicity, humility, service, social justice that are taken for granted here were markedly harder to find there. And I did eventually find really good friends and took fabulous classes in college. But the whole time I just felt like Holden Caulfield, okay? I don't know if The Catcher in the Rye is still on the syllabus, but I was rolling my eyes a lot. I would check out certain scenes of, wealth was flaunted in ways that I don't remember it being flaunted at Sidwell. There were ways that careers in consulting were kind of like the prize thing and nothing else had too much oxygen there. And so I did a lot of eye rolling at the scene. I would go to my dorm room and I'd listen to Tupac on my headphones, and then I'd write angsty folk songs. And it was just like Tupac folk song, eat dinner, go to bed. And so these were some of the cycles that I found myself in college. And there were two things that brought me back into myself during that experience. One was working in the dish room at one of the campus dining halls, and the other was studying abroad, okay? It felt like I learned more about the world from the local dish workers from North Adams, Massachusetts, and from activists in the sort of highlands of southern Mexico than I did in the classroom, okay? Those places were where the heat was for me. And a theme I'm gonna get into is that I was kind of following that heat throughout my 20s, okay? So I emerged from college ready to farm, okay? I had learned about this little farm in Petaluma, California, which is just north of San Francisco, from a friend of my abroad program. I learned that there was a little trailer that what we call the gringo crew gets to stay in, okay? So this is like the crew of English-speaking interns that can harvest in the morning, but then take restaurant orders and sell at farmers markets and do produce deliveries in the evening. And so I got there to Petaluma, and I went with a Sidwell friend, okay? This is Willie and me like 1 year ago. This is not when we were at the farm, okay? But I wanna bring up Willie. I just can't wait to tell him that he was on the walls of here. He and I sort of enabled each other to take this little jump, okay? It's a little bit hard right after your parents worked so hard to get you through Sidwell and through college to look them in the eye and say, it's gonna be a farm that pays a low weekly stipend for me. That's what I'm doing. And Willie and I did this together, and it kind of gave credence to both of our things. This is us in just outside of Albuquerque, where he farms now. So we both kind of like made a pretty consequential decision together. So like enable each other's curiosities, like team up and do the things, okay? The things that are like, if there's two Sidwell kids doing it, it's like, okay? And so I really enjoyed that effect with him. And we arrived on this farm, and it was just this lovely thing. There were hot days, cold nights, long solitude and silence in the fields harvesting, the din of the compressor in the walk-in cooler as you're packing like 200 cases of arugula, and then like snaking through the streets of San Francisco in an unmarked delivery van, double parking in front of really fancy restaurants, coming through with your dirty t-shirt and finding the chef that's like a celebrity chef who knows you by your first name and stuff like that. We had a really nice time doing this. We would slip our guitar cases in the sort of delivery van, so like next to all the arugula and different types of radicchio. We'd do the whole circuit of city restaurants and then the produce terminals south of the city, and we'd drive up to this little club called the Hotel Utah. It was a music club, and we would rock out at the open mic night, okay? And our band name back then and today is the Bitter Greens, okay? And we would always start with this kind of slightly overly righteous thing. We'd be like, the Bitter Greens wants to remind you that the bitterest green is the money in your wallet. Okay, boom, So that was part of our life there, okay? I should mention that during this time, during this window of 1 year working on this farm, I met my wife, Krem, okay? I met somebody who we eventually got married. And you know who set us up? It was another Sidwell friend, okay? So I'm also here just to be a beacon signal to y'all. Set each other up in the future, okay? You know each other in ways that you won't always have the occasion to know somebody this well. Again, the world isn't set up for you to know people like you know each other. Okay, there's plenty of wonderful relationships in your future, let me tell you. But like, there are ways that when Perrin Doniger looked me in the eye and said, "You and Krem," Perrin and I were lifers together. It was just this like we were brother and sister. She's like, "You and Krem, 100%." It was the best dating app ever, and I jumped right in. Okay, so consider doing each other a solid and hooking each other up in the future. But I want to let you know that I want to create a little bit of time for questions, so I'm going to kind of move through this a little bit. Farming had all the things. It had tractor driving, it had late night deliveries, it had solitude. I was able to sit in my trailer and read and write music on off days while the rain did a little pitter patter on top of the roof. It was a really lovely experience, and I got to talk to so many migrant workers from Oaxaca and El Salvador on the farm. And that was kind of a big reason to go, was like to collect narratives from all these different folks living in the world and to have them be part of my best-selling novel, right? Or part of my best-selling folk album, right? Or the basis of a big radio narrative thing that would also somehow make me very famous, okay? So there was a little bit of an extractive spirit to this thing. I also thought that it would be kind of fun to eventually be a teacher and be able to tell my class between lessons just little anecdotes about how Felipe crossed the border or how Carlos doesn't like American food as much as he likes El Salvadoran food. Okay? And there is a lot more I could say about the farm in Petaluma, but I just want to let you know that after I finished working on this farm, I spent about 10 years following the heat, as it were, through different jobs. And here's a list of them. There's the Petaluma Produce Farm. There was a San Francisco youth hostel that I worked at for about a year. There was a produce farm on the coast of Maine. Okay, for 2.5 years of my 20s, I worked at a pickle shop. Okay, this is a pickle shop in Oakland, California. You spend your mornings chopping cabbage and vegetables. You spend your afternoons packing aromatic sauerkraut while like progressive radio and like 80s rock are just booming, okay? Really good places. It felt like grad school. I was just learning so much about the world while I was sitting there and packing the sauerkraut, okay? I was also a restaurant waiter. I was an assistant to a home contractor who was really conservative, and so suddenly I'm not listening to progressive radio anymore. I'm listening to like Glenn Beck, Sean Hannity, and Rush Limbaugh, and it was really intense, okay? It was like really, really jarring. Its own type of study abroad. I was also a small business owner with my wife, Krem, okay? So we were the freelance farmers. We were the ones who would grow vegetables in your yard for you and teach you how to be self-sufficient, okay? Farm your yard was our thing. I realized I'm not exactly cut out for some of the logistics of business ownership, okay? So I'm really excited that that led me into some places that are a little bit more sort of institutional. But I emerged from these jobs with this feeling that as a student, you can wander deep into the libraries and deep into the archives, and you can find primary sources. Or you can wander deep into the world, okay? Sidwell taught me that the world is like this archive, that the world is a classroom, okay? And people are themselves one type of primary source. I'm encouraging you to seek primary sources. Books, music, people, jobs, skills, trades. They offer this direct contact with the fibers of this huge tapestry that we're all a part of. Are you feeling like the pathways that you're expected to follow are crowded or overly prescribed or a bit monotone? Well then, take a ride in Farmer Dave's pickup truck into the Central Valley to meet a guy about irrigation. During that ride, stop off at a roadside burrito stand, and as you scoop raw onion onto your delicious burrito with a plastic spoon, listen to Farmer Dave talk about growing up in a posh neighborhood of LA, how he used to play basketball in the street with little Angie Voigt down the road. Angie Voigt eventually changed her name to Angelina Jolie. Learn about how his life became really wayward and depressed until he ended up going to a kibbutz and growing, grapefruit for a little while. Can I ask the organizers, am I going a little over time? Okay, cool. Yeah, that's great. Break a leg. Okay. Or I'd encourage you, yes, or I'd encourage you to work in a pickle shop. Okay? Or I'd encourage you to learn from Farmer Elliott in Maine how he stays active late into his 80s by thwacking his naked limbs with stinging nettles in his sauna. Okay? Or find yourself nailing cedar shingles into the side of a shed with a guy named Peter as he tells you about how in the winter, fish get this nice layer of fat underneath their skin that makes them triple tasty after a day of ice fishing. Okay? Put your body into spaces with other primary source bodies and feel how being a reader at school and being a liver in the world are very similar, okay? Collect your favorite books, your favorite essays, your favorite people, your favorite moments, your favorite chapters of this life, okay? Letting your life speak involves action. It also involves listening. Who you choose to listen to and to elevate, whose lives had gone unlistened to until you decided to behold them with the same attention as if you were reading James Baldwin or Mark Twain or Toni Morrison. This also seems to be a project of letting one's life speak. So appreciating what another person's life is saying, it's like reading a really great book. You read and you read and you read, and it gives you these reserves of joy and resilience. It helps you keep falling in love with the world again and again. And along the way, it turns out that your life has been speaking. Thank you. Sure, that'd be great. Hey, it looks like if anybody is curious about anything, I have time for 2 questions. I might have just shared everything, so if you have no questions, I totally understand. Please. Thanks for asking that. The universe cursed me, no, didn't curse me. The universe threw me a curveball. I have a son named Adam. He turns 10 in a month. When I played him songs when he was a little baby, cried and cried. When I played him songs when he was like 3, he like learned how to talk to be like, you put that away. And I have not gone back since, okay? So I covertly will play my old songs as a way of almost just like smelling an old smell, you know what I mean? When my kid's at school. And when he comes back, we're gonna reapproach one day. I need to do that. Your question reminds me that I need to do that. But at the moment, songwriting is not as much part of the way that I'm digesting the world. Thank you for that question. Maybe time for one more if anybody has one? All right, happy Founders Day, everybody.